All right, we are back for our second episode of, what is this thing called? Weightlifting Academy, the only show dedicated to putting 10,000 new lifters on the platform in 2012. So we're recording this the day after we posted the very first episode of Weightlifting Academy, and that was a much bigger and cooler response than I actually expected. I thought it would kind of take, like maybe it would take a week to propagate out, and instead it's just kind of blown up. Got a bunch of new signups on the email list, and that's really cool. And a lot of emails I got in my inbox, people telling me that they're into it. So thanks. That's great. I think it's awesome that you guys are
very, very cool. Can't thank you guys enough for for taking time and listening to it. And before we get too far ahead, Nick, I just want to publicly thank you for putting the effort in and the editing and the uploading and all the behind-the-scenes stuff, because my tech skills are somewhere along the line. I turn into my dad when it comes to college.
We're all slowly turning into our dads, man.
The controller started giving me trouble on the TV, and my cell phone gives me trouble, and everything else. So I want to thank you. And just the tech stuff is totally Nick Horton, and I just kind of add some funny faces and hopefully some good information.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. I like it. It's fun. It's interesting stuff. I am a little nerdy, so that it allows me to delve into the nerd stuff that I'm kind of into. That I have a master's degree because I actually like doing that kind of thing. But yeah, the response has been amazing. People are pretty into the idea of helping to spread the word of weightlifting, and I think that's indicative of the fact that it's one of those activities you can get into in life that is, I think because it's a little bit hard, once you get past that threshold a little bit, you get excited about it. And it's something that's really pretty fascinating, and you get it gets into your life, and you never really get rid of it anymore. It's a serious part of your life from then on. Kind of like learning how to play piano or something. You learn how to play a musical instrument, and all of a sudden you're in this crew of people who can play musical instruments. And I think the same thing is happening with weightlifting. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty stoked about it. So we wanted to talk about a couple things, some of which were given to us by audience members asking questions. And some other things were just off the top of our head. But I did want to give a shout out real quick. I'm wearing my Kauai CrossFit shirt here. This is the shirt that I got when I ran a seminar in Kauai when I was on my honeymoon, because my wife let me work. Right? That's passion, yes. I went on my honeymoon 6-7 months ago. I'm supposed to know that exact date, but
you better figure it out next 6 or 5 months,
yeah,
right?
Leslie, I'm sorry. But we went to Kauai, Hawaii, which is like a small island in Hawaii, very small. I mean, it ain't big. You can drive around the whole thing in like a couple hours. And we were getting really tired of using the hotel weight room. I was like, pumping up my pecs and my guns every day, and that was getting a little bit annoying. And so we looked online to see if there was any place at all that might maybe have a squat rack. That would be awesome. And we actually stumbled across the fact that there was a CrossFit in Kauai. And I was like, oh, man, this is perfect. I can go check out a CrossFit. I mean, the best thing about CrossFit is that they have all the same equipment that we do. I mean, they have bumper plates. They got barbells. Usually like the Rogue barbells, they're pretty good barbells actually, and squat stands. I mean, sometimes not even like the full like huge powerlifter rack. It's just like the stands, which is exactly what I would be normally used to anyway. So we went over there, emailed the guy, the head coach, and he was like, "Hey, you're a weightlifting coach. Sweet. How would you like to run a seminar?" And so I was actually kind of stoked on that, and so we did. We ran a quick Olympic lifting seminar, and I met some really cool people. One of which, Sunshine, is this really cool lady, Sunshine, who has been interacting with me and reading my blog and stuff ever since I got back and gotten really into weightlifting. I was really impressed by her in that seminar. She was very adept, actually, at weightlifting. And I was pretty impressed. But to bring it all back around to Weightlifting Academy, she sent me a Facebook message yesterday, kind of stoked about what we're doing. She's really into the Weightlifting Academy idea, but brought up the point that we're all facing, which is that most places in the United States do not have a place to learn Olympic weightlifting itself. I mean, you might have the equipment now because there's a lot of CrossFit clubs, and that's actually a huge first step. So a lot of people can just go to a CrossFit place. In fact, a lot of CrossFit places are really nice, and they'll let you just do your weightlifting training there, you know, and not actually do their CrossFit WODs if that's your thing. And I think that's a heck of a development. But the problem, of course, is that you still need some level of coaching. You need some guidance on what to do. And, you know, before I had gotten there, you know, they'd never had somebody who's a professional weightlifting coach teach them what to do before. You know, they're in a unique spot, obviously. They're at a very small island. And so but that's not, their situation's not different, really, than most people in the country, which is that they do not have access to an actual weightlifting coach to teach them what to do. And, you know, anything we can do to help mitigate this problem is, you know, a big part of what it's all about is to say, well, okay, you may not have physical access to a coach at all times, but you do have access to coaches now. And that's a big deal because that means you can steer your training pretty far. And, you know, someone like her, she's really, you know, quite talented at weightlifting. I mean, I was pretty impressed. She just kind of picked it. She's one of those people like you were saying last time about how, you know, sometimes you just see somebody squat right. And you're like, wow, that person just squat right. She was like that.
You just kind of know it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And, you know, to be able to help, I mean, I'm not saying if you're struggling with squats, I'm not saying anything bad about you. Remember my story about Chris. It's all about consistency. But of course, there are those people who, you know, they're pretty set up to do some cool things in the sport, sure, but maybe they're not set up in terms of, you know, the infrastructure of coaching and all that stuff.
That's why weightliftingacademy.com is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's some interesting developments in the world of weightlifting itself that you want to talk about the new classification systems. That's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of if you're not in the world of weightlifting, I'll let Michael explain it a little better, but there's a new classification system being set up, which in my opinion is sort of like the belt system in martial arts. Maybe you can explain that a little bit better.
I think the belt system is probably the best way to approach it. And I'm guessing 40 years ago, from what I've read just recently, Bill Starr, who we mentioned last episode as well, he was kind of fundamental and made a classification system for lifters. So at the local level, the national level, up to like international elite level. And for every weight class, for men and women, there's a set criteria. It's based on world championships or maybe Olympic results or things that, you know, ideally people will strive for. But what I really like about it is it gives little bite-sized pieces for a new weightlifter to start kind of biting off as they get involved in the sport. So you bring a new lifter into the gym, and after the first 3, 4, 5 months of teaching them the lifts, and then they decide, hey, I'm gonna compete in the meet, and they put up a total. The next question is usually, well, what's next? And if if we're in the right time of the calendar year, you can say, hey, you can qualify for the American Open, right?
Right.
So then they go to their next meet, qualify for the American Open. Even if they lift and qualify for the Open, which is pretty much achievable by anybody, there's still 6 months to nationals. You know, in some weight classes, there's a pretty big gap between the American Open and nationals. And this is just the classifications are just another thing for somebody to stay consistent and shoot for each time that they come into the gym or each local meet. They're looking to achieve that You know, like again,
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there are some people who it's going to take
for their yellow belt, and test for their purple belt, and,
yeah,
and test for their brown belt.
Right.
And I think it's something that's been missing for a long while, and I'm all for it.
Right. Yeah. That's, you know, there are people for whom it will take, you know, if you were going to qualify for open nationals in your weight class, I mean, it could take you 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're a little older. You know, like some people, for some people that may not ever, if you're of a certain age, you may not actually ever qualify for open nationals. But, you know, let's say you're under 30 or under 35 even. This is something I think it is achievable.
Sure.
If you can just qualify for open nationals, you'll probably actually be a very good masters competitor in your age class. But that's a hard road, right? I mean, that's a long time sometimes. You know, like my lifter Brandon has only been lifting for a year and a half, and he's going to nationals this year. He's not going to do great because he's just starting, but he's going to go. But that's started at 19.
Yep.
You know, and so a year and a half. You could double that pretty easy for somebody who is a little older, or maybe didn't have the time to train as much as he does. I mean, Brandon's kind of a fanatic. He trains twice a day a lot of times. So, you know, his rate of progress is a little higher than most. So how do you bite-size that up a little bit and say, well, yeah, your long-term goal, get to nationals, and then, of course, you have goals after that. But what do you do in the meantime? I mean, it's hard to stay motivated for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and here's a better example. Well, Brandon is a 62 or a 69.
He's going into 62 this year. We're going to move him up to 69 after that.
So here's a perfect example. He's going to nationals lifting, you know, as a 62. He's got one of the Barnes brothers, the Darren Barnes, outstanding lifters.
Yeah, phenomenal.
It's going to be a long while before, you know, truthfully speaking, before Brandon can knock one of those guys out of the medal stand, right? At 69, he's got Caleb Williams, good, you know, very good lifter, right? The older brother of the Barnes brothers, Derek Johnson's also 69. So he's got some years to kind of catch up to those guys and to lift weights.
Yeah, I mean, some of those guys have been going 5-10 years. I mean,
so if Brandon was approaching nationals as if I don't win a gold, I'm a failure, then he's going to fail for many years.
Yeah, that mindset would be all wrong.
So I think you have the idea of, you know, you can qualify for nationals, do your best, maybe get a medal. But it's just it's another thing. It's another kind of extrinsic thing that can kind of motivate somebody to stay with it and keep chasing after totals. Because medals are always going to be determined by who else is in that weight class. So right now I weigh 192, 195, and I'm pretty far off from qualifying for nationals. But if I did qualify for nationals at 94 kilos, the top 6 or 7 guys at 94 this year are studs. You know, there's going to be
that's actually a pretty stacked weight class.
Oh, that's what I mean. So if I got my act together and I put up a 300 total at 94, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, that's some serious stuff. Yeah.
Still, but the top 5, literally top 5 or 6 guys are going to be snatching above 140, 145.
Yeah.
So if I approach going to nationals as, well, I didn't medal, I'm a failure. You know, that may happen for a few more years because that class is loaded, but it gives me something else to kind of start shooting for. And those totals aren't determined by who else is in that weight class, right? So it doesn't matter if there's 3 guys in 94 that are going to snatch 160. It doesn't matter if there are 3 guys at 94 that are going to clean and jerk above 190.
Yeah.
It basically says you achieve this total, you reach this classification. And there's some talk of like giving some sort of little, certificate or patch and stuff like that's okay, I guess. But
did they have anything like
more of chasing numbers versus just chasing?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's actually one of the reasons I like this particular type of individual sport, sort of like the field sports and track and field or sprinting or whatever, because your best bet to be good is to constantly try to kick your own ass.
Exactly.
Like you're not. While it's sort of true that you're competing against others, I mean that is obvious. I mean it is true, but in any particular moment in the sport, like you're going on the platform to compete, it's really just you and a bar.
Yeah.
You know, this is a lot like, say, you know, a discus thrower. A discus thrower, it's not like you have 7 discus throwers all up there and who, you know, at the same time. You know, it's just one at a time.
Sure.
And whoever gets the most that day does well. But how did they get the most that day? Well, they got the most that day because they got better than themselves the previous day and better than themselves the day after that. You know, like they're always improving. And yeah, exactly. And they're always working that way. And what's cool about a sport like this is that you get that sort of, it's very obvious.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, I could only snatch, you know, say 60 kilos this year, and now I can snatch 80 kilos, and now I can snatch 100 kilos, you know, like it. And it's pretty clear. You know, I like that kind of clarity. Whereas you're a softball player, right? And you could be a pretty good softball player.
Sure.
But you've also got all these other people on the team.
Yeah, well, even not on your team, but no matter how good a softball hitter you are,
yeah,
your ability to hit is always based on the pitcher from the other team, and vice versa. If you're a really good pitcher in softball, your pitching is based on how good the hitters are you're throwing against, and it doesn't have that. It's
right,
you and the barbell.
You don't have people like me dragging down your team. I played softball a lot, and yeah, I'm usually not very good. It's hilarious because I'll step onto I'll go to to bat, and if we've never played that team before, the people in the outfield will all go backwards. You know, they assume based on what I look like, this guy is going to just hammer this out of the park, and I can just barely hit it over second base. Yeah. And, you know, luckily I can run faster, else I would never get on base. But, you know, it is kind of funny. You know, like with weightlifting, it really is, it's just you against you. And it is kind of cool with the classification system. It's a lot like a belt system. You know, you can become a black belt. You may or may not ever beat in an actual competition, like a judo competition, right? You may or may not ever beat these other black belts. But you're still a black belt.
Yeah, and you're still working hard every day, and you're chasing that belt. And kind of along those same lines, when you were competing in powerlifting or even with weightlifting, did you ever win a medal because you were the only person in the weight class, or
all the time?
Yeah, at the local meets.
That's how I win medals, man. It's like my strategy.
But you can go back through even. This sounds silly, but even within the last 10 years at national meets, especially some of the lower weight classes, at 56 kilos for men one year, there were no competitors at nationals.
Right.
I'd say once or twice in the last 10 years there was 1 or 2 competitors at nationals. So if I could somehow emaciate myself down to 56 kilos,
right,
and show up at nationals. When
you heard it here, folks, first.
If there was 4 lifters at 56 and somehow I was there and one of them bombed out, that makes me a medalist at a national meet. So medals are nice, and that's the goal of competing is to win. But that doesn't always indicate success. It indicates who else is in the weight class. It indicates who else showed up that day. By having that classification system, you're chasing after bigger totals, right? It's a graded progression of you do this at the local level, you do this at the national level, you do this. Do you know
if they have a Sinclair component to that for people who are past their, quote unquote prime?
I think they don't, but maybe they should. Maybe they should have something similar at for masters meets.
Yeah, just a masters version of it, because I think that would be interesting. Because I know certainly probably the bulk of our audience are like us. Mm-hmm. Where, I'll never be able to compete against Brandon, even though I'm in a bigger weight class.
Yeah.
Just because his age. I actually, I work out with him a lot of the times, and I try to keep up with him, pound for pound, set for set, rep for rep. and that's hard to do. You know, he's like going off and playing video games and hanging out with his friends afterwards, you know, and having no problem. And I'm like hobbling into the door, you know,
in the ice tub, right, getting therapy.
And you know, it started out I was a lot stronger than him when he started, you know, and now he's surpassing me. You know, now he's pretty regularly. You can clean and jerk a lot more than me. You can snatch a little more than me. And you know, he weighs less than me, and that's just that gap is just gonna keep expanding. Yeah, I'm improving and all, but
Sure.
my rate of improvement is quite a bit slower than his.
Yeah.
But you know, becoming very good for your level, which is what weightlifting's all about, right? I mean, that's what it's cool about. You have a weight class, you have a gender class,
Yep.
and you have an age class.
Yep.
So you really are only competing against people who are like you.
Yeah.
It's not like you're competing against the Brandons of the world, which I think is very motivating. I've found it to be highly motivating, actually, to a lot of people coming into my gym who, you know, they're on the one hand, they're excited when they see like the Cal Strength guys or something, or they see Pat Mendez do a 200K snatch on YouTube, and they're like, whoa, man, 200K snatch. But then on the other hand, they go, well, I'll never do that.
I'll never beat him.
I'll never beat him.
We're having the gym I coach at is a black box strength and conditioning. It's owned by Dutch Lowy, who's a nationally ranked competitor at 69 kilos, and so he's probably going to compete in the meet too. And he's going to coach, you know, he's going to coach a bunch of lifters. And if people are approaching it like, well, I'll never beat him at the meet.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably going to beat everybody at the meet anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You should be out there competing against yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think with the I actually think the masters weightlifting community is it's sort of set up already to be pretty good. I mean, like they're doing things a lot of things right, I think. And you know, I definitely think we can dramatically increase the membership there. But I do like that the community's pretty solid. There's a lot of really cool people in it. But you do have to you have to change your mindset around a little bit. You know, you have to be part of it is accepting some realities in life, you know, that obviously we can't all beat Pat Mendez. I mean, even a lower weight class person, right, his age will never lift what he lifts because he's a super heavyweight, you know. When I first started competing here in Oregon, you know, so the way that a lot of the meets here in Oregon are run is just weight on bar to keep things fast. So what that means is whatever you're lifting, it doesn't matter what your weight class is, your gender or whatever, we all lift on the same bar. Sure. And we just keep going up because that keeps the meets down to about a couple hours. And that meant I had to compete against Sarah Bertram, who is a 2-time national champion. She's been on the world team. She's coached by Tom Hertz, and she's always been stronger than me. My goal was, okay, I'm going to out-snatch and out-clean and jerk Sarah someday. That took me 5 years. For 5 years, I was getting my butt kicked by a girl who weighed less than me.
All right.
So, you know, there's a lot of women in this country who are quite a bit better than I am at Olympic weightlifting, and will always be. You know, some of them are just Sarah Robles. You know, she's ridiculously strong, and that's okay. You know, you have to just go with where you're at, you know, and really go for it. So I just think maybe the classification system can help increase that even more. Say, well, you don't just have these classes and what you do in any one moment, like you're saying, in a medal for a certain meet. It's a cool thing. It's a good thing. Don't discount yourself. It's a great thing if you got that. Even if you were the only person in the meet, at least you showed up and the other people didn't.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. But it's even cooler to have something that's a little more, you know, comparable.
Sure. Like the person that finishes fourth, I keep going back to it, but 94 kilos this year at National. I'm excited to watch how that pans out. Whoever finishes fourth is still going to lift a ton of weight. And in previous years, that total may have won 94 kilos.
Yeah.
So you can't discredit that performance, but they're not coming home with a medal. And your whole life shouldn't be based around a $20 medal. It should be more about the total and then trying to improve your total. And I'll tell you another story. I mentioned this to from the Facebook group, the weightlifting Facebook group, about this classification system. When I first got involved in coaching in Wichita Falls with Glenn, we would bring in new lifters, and we had tons of junior lifters at that time. We probably had 30 to 40 kids under the age of 20 lifting and competing. At the time, USA Weightlifting every summer had a junior squad camp. So every summer, they would invite the top juniors out to the training center. They would stay out there for a week and get some coaching from the national team coaches. And it was just a really great experience for every kid that went out there. And so this is back in like 2001, 2002, but we could bring a kid into the gym the first day and say, hey, you want to take a trip to Colorado this summer, live and train at the Olympic Training Center for a week, all expenses paid.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Make this total. So then in the back of their mind, and the weights were based off of percentage of like junior world team totals.
Okay.
But for any kid that showed up and wanted to train hard for 9, 12 months, it was an achievable goal. And every day that kid could come into the weight room and say, well, I'm chasing that 280 total at 105, or I'm chasing that 272 total at 94. And it didn't matter that the kids going to junior worlds in the same weight class were lifting 300 total. This is a perfect example. We had a lifter, Brett Crossland, who's now a Division I college strength coach. He was in 105. Casey Bergner, who was also the same weight class. Casey grew up weightlifting, was going to junior worlds and was lifting. I think he clean and jerked 400 pounds as like a 18 or 19-year-old. And Brett just got started like that year. But he wasn't chasing Casey. He was, but in way off distance. He was chasing that total, which was about 280 at 105. And every day coming into the gym was getting better and closer to that total to get out to the Colorado Springs and live and train at the training center. They did away with that because I think it was getting too big. I think the one year they had maybe 70 kids made the total. And
oh, wow.
Instead of raising the totals, they just dropped the whole program. And some of that SOC saying, well, we're going to make it, we're just going to eliminate some cost, and this is one of them. But at the same time, it gave everybody something to shoot for, especially at the junior level. And I really wish that would come back too, but I'll take the classification system, and you can run with that and try to match it.
That's a good start. I think we should. So I have some other ideas on that maybe I could just throw out in the ether, and people can tell me whether or not they're good or dumb. About other ways that you can help promote the sport a little bit by sort of expanding the scope of the sport. So a lot of sports have like regional championships before you get to like a national championship. And one problem we've always had, like I know that this was definitely true with my team, was you basically have just two levels. You have your local area competitions where, it's a couple-hour drive to a competition, or maybe you do it in your own gym or something. And so it's pretty low-key. And then you have a national level competition, which is not low-key. It's like pretty intense, like you got all this stuff going on. And there's the best of the best there. And so you either are the best in a very, very tiny pond, or you're at least good in a very tiny pond, or you're just getting swamped. And I think it would be very interesting most states have a state championship. Well, at least a lot of states have a state championship. But maybe take that up a little bit.
California State Championship is very different than the South Dakota State Championship.
Absolutely, yeah. Like here in Oregon, we're a pretty small state, so our state championship looks identical for the most part to our local meets. It's just that instead of doing it at one of the gyms,
at a high school or something.
We actually do it at University of Oregon.
Oh, nice, cool.
Yeah, Jimmy Radcliffe, who's the strength and conditioning coach at University of Oregon, is a huge Olympic weightlifting fan, and he, I would say, a lot of talk, by the way, if you're into football, has been going around about the particular coaching style of their head coach for football. I think a lot of the reason that U of O is a good team is also because of Jimmy Ratcliffe, who's their strength and conditioning coach, who's really into Olympic-style weightlifting.
He's a high-energy guy. I've met him before at an NSCA conference, and high energy is a good way to describe him.
Yeah.
Fun little fact, I guess. He's always hosted that meet. I'm not sure if it was the state championship. He's always had a meet out there. And many years ago, USAW used to publish like a year-end ranking. You go online, and anybody who's ever lifted at a local meet in a weight class in 1 year as like it was either 105 or 105 plus. Like the second or third heaviest total put up was a guy named Igor Olshansky. He was a football player at University of Oregon. He's now playing in the NFL. And he's been in the NFL for like 10 or 12 years, and I think he played for the Cowboys last year. But at one time he actually had a 160 kilo snatch as a super heavyweight, but was using it as a way to get better at football.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. So my lifter Chris, who I mentioned last time, he had as a goal because he's in the same weight class as a lot of the football players. He's a 105 to outlift one of these like oddball. You know, every state championship, there's always gonna be one or two football players who do it just for fun.
Yep.
You know, and it was always this goal, like I'm gonna outlift one of those guys one of these days. And he finally did. He's like right up there with a lot of these guys. I mean, every once in a while there's the guys who come in who are really just phenomenal. But most of the time, they're strong guys, but they're beatable if you stick with it for a long time.
A little rough around the edges, technique.
Yeah, right. Because your technique's going to be better, you're going to outlift him, and that's what happened. His technique on the snatch far beats most football players, even these football players who are better than most. And the same thing with the clean and jerk. But yeah, you take a state championship, you just kind of expand that out a little bit. Like if we had, like say like over here we had the Northwest regional championships, and you had a Southwest and a Northeast,
South Central, absolutely,
all that. Yeah, I mean that would be really interesting because it would allow for a step in between, and if you had that, I think you would get a stronger participation. All the way up the line.
I agree, 100%. And again, it kind of gives you something to shoot for. And you mentioned before, 5 years is a legitimate goal from entry into the sport to lifting at nationals. Some people it's much shorter, some people it's longer, but 5 years, right? But now you have something at the 2-year mark and the 3-year mark to kind of shoot for. So you the local level meets, you do the state level meets, you come up with a regional championship. That's a good intermediate goal, and that's the same exact principle. The wheels were turning on that a few months back for Muscle Driver USA, who's a manufacturer of barbell. They do the Pendlay barbell line. Big supporters of the sport, Olympic weightlifting. They were starting a Grand Prix series, and that was I think that was one of the goals, was to have a regional level meet that had prizes and some winning. But outside of the normal American Open in the winter, national championship in the spring, international meets kind of through the summer into the early fall, they wanted to have something else for the rest of us. And I think that's kind of exactly what we're talking about. And I hope that follows through. I know they did a test event in Charlotte last fall.
Right. It seemed like it went well, but I haven't heard the sort of like the insider
next step
information.
Logistically, it's tough because they're based on the East Coast and then Glenn's out on the West Coast. But I think for the regional meets to really succeed, it might have to be kind of like the same group that hosts the state championships, and then just bump it up a notch. Extra volunteers, extra help. Extra loaders and judges and things like that. And I think you were right on. Have like a Northwest. California is stacked from top to bottom. There's good lifters from San Diego up to Sacramento.
They're their own region. Yeah,
exactly. Arizona's got a bunch of good lifters too, but maybe Arizona, New Mexico, and then Nevada. That's a region.
That'd be a pretty beastly one right there. Yeah.
We bring some of the Louisiana kids over, and Texas has a stacked thing.
Yeah,
they're the Mid-America Championships, which are usually like in Indiana, Chicago. That's already in place, or maybe you do it at the Arnold or the Columbus weightlifting crew. They get together and they have a big Mid-America / that region, Northeast and then Southeast, and that would be a cool schedule of events throughout the year.
That'd be really cool.
One step above the state championships. a step below the national level championships.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. So idea number 2. Have a B class for all major national meets that's open.
There you go.
So you have to qualify for the A class, and it's just like it is now. And to be, obviously to do well, you're going to have qualified, because you're not going to outlift somebody if you can't even qualify.
Sure.
But if you had an open B class, you dramatically increase the number of people who show up.
Sure.
The Arnold every year is, one of the biggest, is the biggest meet every year.
It's the most visible.
Not just because Arnold Schwarzenegger's there or because everybody wants to go and watch a bunch of bodybuilding.
Sure.
It's because they can go.
Yeah.
They actually can go. You don't have to have.
The Friday night, kind of like the A session. That's where the heaviest, pound for pound lifts are going to happen. But there's competitions all weekend.
All weekend, yeah, that's totally awesome. And if that was true for every national meet, everything from collegiates to juniors, American Open, whatever, then you're going to have a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is important. If you have the top lifters lifting in front of a pretty much a dead audience with not a lot of people in it, that's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
If you have the audience just jam-packed with the best audience you could possibly have, people who actually do the sport.
Other weightlifters, yeah.
Other weightlifters. Then that's going to kick the energy up quite a bit. And I would actually suspect some lifters would just flat out lift better.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But it would also I think it would just increase the sort of excitement of the sport. Because you go and you watch a high-level lifter do what they're doing, and that's some serious motivation. I always felt lucky that there was a couple, like Sarah Bertram here in Oregon. So every time we went to a local meet, there was at least one national caliber lifter there just kicking ass.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, this person's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's inspirational, to see that. And, that's another way to keep people going, during that long period of development that happens. Well, I'm not going to qualify for nationals, but I can go to nationals, I can compete, and I can watch it and be there and be a part of that. And I'm not just in the audience, I'm actually a member here.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
I think you're onto something. I think some of the logistics have to work out about how you'll arrange all those things, but I think that's another great idea. Meet promoters, the people that consistently put on good national level meets, I think they would love it. I think that improves their bottom line. I think there's a kind of like
people paying an entry fee.
There's a big myth that people that run meets make money, and
yeah, that is a crock.
Yeah, everybody who puts on a meet, the best you can do is break even.
Yeah, because you're probably going to lose money.
You're going to lose money. Truth of the matter is, but so now the person that's running the American Open, and they're hoping against hope that there's going to be 250, 300 competitors. Now that number gets 550, 600. Not a chance to make money, but the chances of them losing money are going to be much, much less. Hotel rooms will be full. The city that hosts the national meets will like that because it's more hotels, it's more and then, from the competitor side, it gives you something to shoot for. It's not like if you qualify for the American Open in December, you don't just have to go to local meets and dominate for the next 12 months if you're not ready for nationals. It gives you that I can go to nationals, and next year I'm going to lift in the A session or however C session, because it's they didn't meet the qualifying total, but the C session is open, or just having an open session at nationals and maybe run it the same way you run a local meet. I don't know how you guys do it, but out here in Texas, we'll have lots of weight classes in the same session, just based on overall numbers. So they lift even at the state meet. We don't just have 56. It may be like 56, 62, 69, and maybe 77 all lift in the same session. Yeah. So run that with the national meets.
Absolutely.
2 or 3 sessions that, if you're qualifying, if you lift below 200K, you're in this session. Between 200
that's a good way to do it.
You're in this session, 250 to 300, or whatever. Other numbers work out. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, that kind of been mulling around, but I really got into the idea when I was down at the Las Vegas Open, and Jon Broz had talked about how Jon Broz is the coach of Average Broz gym down in Las Vegas. So if you don't know that, go check out his YouTube channel and you will be impressed. I promise you that.
You'll spend the rest of the day there. So
oh, you will, yeah.
Block off some time on your schedule. It's a lot of great videos with lots of big lifts.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he's a real cool guy. He's real mellow. But he had said, on a number of occasions he's been asked to put on nationals in Las Vegas because, it's Las Vegas and that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But there's just a serious logistics issue here, in order to book the hotels, you need to be able to guarantee a certain number of people and all that kind of stuff. And you just can't do that with the minuscule number of people that actually can qualify for nationals. There's just not that many people who can do it in any one year.
Yeah.
You open up the field, however, and all of a sudden you've got a huge event.
Yeah.
Just like we were saying with marathons, where there's a tiny group of people who are really the super competitors.
Yep.
And everybody else is competing for different reasons, and they're doing it for themselves, and they might be of any age and ability level. And marathons are huge.
Yeah,
marathons are huge. To have just a small amount of that.
Our goal of 10,000 new lifters in 2012 is a small.
That's already a small goal, yeah.
Really, like I said, I think 10,000, 15,000 is very common. For just any city USA's annual marathon, Dallas, Horton, Seattle, wherever. If we could get a piece of that population. Right. And it's also that total number, like you said, it's the guaranteed rooms and different things like that. But I think sponsors are more likely to advertise at a meet that they know. Like, best case scenario, there's 150, 180 lifters at nationals.
Right.
That's not a lot of people that are going to buy products of a potential sponsor, whether it's a weightlifting sponsor or a company related to.
You'd have to have some pretty high-priced items to make some money off of just 150 people.
It's just maybe a whole other podcast for future, but you look at even like small niche sports, like there are companies that have aligned with those sports because they know it's like a mutual relationship. Like in Texas, rodeo is a very big sport. Every self-respecting rodeo cowboy wears Wrangler jeans. Sure. Wrangler is a huge sponsor for rodeo events. Wrangler's been in business forever. They make jeans for many different purposes, but they've aligned themselves with cowboys and rodeo.
Yeah.
It's no different. It wouldn't be Wrangler, but another company like that.
Yes. Yeah.
With Olympic weightlifting, if they know there's going to be 300 people at nationals, 500 people at nationals.
Yeah.
They're not going to put up a big exhibit, a big booth for, like I said, 150.
Right.
And that's like 10 people per weight class.
So that brings up an interesting point. I actually wanted to. So there's a counter argument that I got, which I think is a reasonable one, which is like, well, yeah, marathons run the way that you guys are talking about, right? Where you have like this small group of super competitors and then everybody else, the 90% who are not that. Doing it, but very few sports actually function that way. Like gymnastics, which we use as an example, doesn't. Like there's basically there's some, but there's very little masters gymnastics going on. The bulk of the sport, the really meat and potatoes of the sport, is the kids.
Yeah.
And my feeling is, well, two things. One, it's how hard is it to actually just do the sport on a practical level will determine how broad your user base or your member base is. So I think we're closer to a marathon. We're closer to softball than we are like gymnastics. So our sport is very easy to do, like we had mentioned in the last episode about how you just need a platform and some bouncy plates, and you're good to go. You can do our sport. Some chalk is nice. Yeah, or dirt. Look up, like there's a cool video out there of I think they're from Kenya. There's a team in Kenya. They have a bunch of videos online.
Cement plates training on dirt platform.
On dirt platform and this like old shack or outside. They are doing the best with what they got, and they are lifting some big weight, and it's pretty awesome. But that's indicative, I think, of what's possible with weightlifting. So to me, that's one side, which is that we actually can get a lot of people to do it just for fun very easily. You don't need a lot of equipment. It's like boxing, you just don't need a lot of equipment. And then the other and is that you don't even need everybody to even compete in the sport. The rodeo is a great example of that, where Wrangler is a big selling pair of jeans to a ton of people who just want the look of a rodeo guy. You know, they might ride a horse, but they aren't going to, like, you know, ride a bucking horse, you know, or get on a bull. But they still want the Wrangler vibe, the look. And
I think advertise. They also sponsor some of the top competitors.
Yes.
You know, so they're making money, and all because they're bringing a much larger group of people to different events. And I think weightlifting can learn from that.
Yeah, and I think weightlifters are actually, we are in some sense like the rodeo people, right? Where, you know, what we're doing looks kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, to an outside observer, throwing that kind of weight over your head looks wild.
Yeah.
You know, that's wild. And it is objectively cool.
Yeah.
And so you increase the participation of the people who do it. That's huge, because your rodeos are actually fairly big. I mean, here in Oregon, there's a ton of rodeos here in Oregon. I have two friends from high school who did that competitively for about 10 years. You know, that's true probably in every state. You go outside the city and you're probably going to find a group of people who are into rodeos. I think the same can be true with weightlifting. And then you have the next level out, which are people who just kind of dabble.
Yeah.
You know, so like the CrossFit world are awesome that way. You know, they're definitely interested in weightlifting just as a thing.
Sure.
You know, and if a company, a sponsorship company, sees that whole spectrum, they say, okay, well, you got the super competitors who are really great, and those are maybe, you know, the face of the product.
We'll sponsor them. So
now we'll sponsor them.
So now they can actually supplement their income and train harder because they're getting sponsor dollars from a company.
Yeah, because if, you know, Caleb Ward says that he likes this particular product, you know, and he uses this particular product, well, now we have this whole range of people who would use that product, some of which might do it in a competition. A lot of them, actually, the majority maybe wouldn't even ever compete, but they want to have the same kind of vibe. Same thing with the Olympic weightlifting shoes. I mean, most people who buy Olympic weightlifting shoes, I mean, I would say in an ideal world, the most people who buy them wouldn't be people who would ever compete. They just use them for better training.
Absolutely.
You know, most people who buy a weightlifting belt are not competitive powerlifters or weightlifters. They just, or bodybuilders or whatever. They just wear the weightlifting belt.
They want to train harder.
They want to train harder, and they you know, they see a value in that. And I think all the equipment manufacturers, by that I mostly mean the clothing equipment manufacturers, you know, that whole world is a big, wide open market, so long as you can prove that this is a viable business model for them.
And you need more than 150 competitors to do that. You need several hundred, and they need to bring their friends and family, and then you're talking about a pretty good turnout. You're talking, instead of 300 total people, you're talking about 3,000, and then people are going to start taking notice.
Yeah, and you know, it's like soccer in that, you know, people for a long time said, well, soccer can't be popular in the United States, but they were sort of discounting the reality that humans are humans. So if it's super popular all over the world, in other countries, that's enough proof that it can be popular in the United States. Cultural differences aside, culture, you know, it moves around a lot, you know, over time. And if it's proved that this thing can be popular in other parts of the world, well, we're humans too. Whatever it is that those people are fascinated by, there's a good chance there's going to be a subgroup of Americans who are going to be fascinated by it too. And now soccer is an ever-growing sport. It's actually getting quite popular. And, you know, so that the naysayers have kind of been disproven in that sense. You know, maybe it's never going to be basketball, you know, or the NFL, but it's doing pretty good. You know, they're making money.
Doing better, especially out your way.
They're doing real good out here.
Yeah.
It's pretty popular here.
Seattle, Portland both have a
push. Big rivalry going on right now.
Yeah, big following.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think weightlifting is sort of the same way. And Olympic-style weightlifting is ridiculously popular in a lot of countries. I mean, just ridiculous. You know, if your name is Pyros Demos and you live in Greece, you are a superstar.
Yeah.
You know, you're like Michael Jordan.
I don't know this to be 100% true, but I've heard that Rezazadah's wedding was broadcast on national television in Iran.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing. You know, in certain countries, the general public sees the sport as something truly interesting and cool, and it is. I don't think this is just subjectively true. I think there's some objective reality to that the things humans like, there's the speed aspect, and like there's sort of a slight danger aspect. I mean, it's a safe sport, and we actually, contrary to popular belief, have like among the lowest injury rates of any sport out there. But it looks dangerous, so it has that vibe to it. And that makes it more exciting to watch, and everybody's really buff, that doesn't hurt. There's all these kinds of things going for the sport. It's just a matter of, we'll let people know it exists, and they will get into it.
I think those were two really good ideas, Nick, and I think we put those in practice, and we're a little bit closer to our goal of 10,000 in 2012.
Right. Well, awesome, man. So we've gone about a little over our 40-minute mark.
Yeah.
But we did I think it's a good one, a good run, because those are some good ideas we can kind of bounce around. And we would love to hear, you in the audience, love to hear your views on any other ideas. I mean, that's just us talking, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's great to get ideas from people who are, maybe even a little more removed from the sport. We're coaches, so, we think about this stuff all day long. But maybe, you're coming in from another sport, or you're coming in from another area, and you've got some cool ideas that were working somewhere else that you can bring in and let us know about. Because, anything that could work is something we can really push. And, your ideas are more than welcome. So definitely. And if you have some criticisms of these ideas, definitely throw them out, because
let us know.
Yeah, it's all about sort of hammering out the details and figuring, what's actually going to work, because that's how you can then take the next step and make it actionable.
Yeah, we don't claim to have all the answers, but we have some ideas, and we'd like to hear yours too. So,
right.
Comments on the site, the Facebook fan page should be up soon.
Yeah, by the time this comes out, Facebook.com/Weightlifting Academy.
There you go.
Facebook.com/Weightlifting Academy will be up and running and rocking. So check that out.
Yeah.
And
drop us a comment. Let us know. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, Michael. Good episode,
Great
man.
job, buddy.
Yep.
And, until next time.
Yep.